Zoom.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's some more down there.
Are we missing anything?
All right, are we waiting on anybody?
We've got our full membership here.
Oh, Susan, Deb. Are we waiting on anybody?
No, I think everybody's here.
We've all arrived.
But we do, because we have more people in the audience, we may want to explain the difference in the procedure.
You got it?
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so let me call the meeting to order first, or, okay. All right. Oh, before we go on the record, it's probably too late, but we haven't had minutes the last couple of meetings. Are we having a cumulative set of minutes for all of these?
There was one of the visitors produced a record from the last meeting, which will be shared. And I don't know whether, is that going to happen again? Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Are we not doing
We're
the civic
deputizing.
sunlight anymore?
Well, I think that's automatic. We don't request it.
Gotcha.
All right. Are we on the record?
Yep.
All right. Call this meeting to order. Good evening, everybody, audience included. Tonight's, this is the second of two series that we're doing where each of the members of the MERCAC will be sharing their recommendations and the rationale leading to those recommendations. So we have three of our members who will be going tonight. Five. Why did I only write four down?
I don't know.
And
'cause
Oh,
that's-
Deb. So you're the.
I'm five.
You're
I'm the
the-
caboose.
You're being bashful. You didn't want to say your name. I got it. All right. So for purposes of the audience in particular, what we're going to be doing tonight is deliberating among ourselves. We'll hear our presentations and then have a round of discussion, questions, and comments based on what we've heard from each of our five folks tonight. At the end of the meeting, as with all of our meetings, actually, it's not on the agenda, but
Well, it's not because there may not be time.
okay. All right.
These meetings are really devoted to the members sharing their thoughts and also discussing with the other members.
All right.
And so if there's time,
scheduled meeting.
as there was last time, we may be able to have public comment. But if not, white
Right.
cards. And you're all welcome to write your questions or thoughts on those white cards.
And as always, you can email us through our email address, which is available on our website. So it is on there, right?
Sure.
Yes.
All right. So that's gonna be our order of business tonight. Before we proceed with our presentations, we're gonna ask Audra to provide a town manager update. Audra, is there a town manager update?
I don't really have an update, and I think it's better to use this time for all of you. So if there's, at the next meeting, I can have something prepared, and that's probably a better place for it.
There it is.
I think it bears saying that this isn't a normal one of our meetings. It's a meeting that we've packed in order to get this rationale of our opinions set. So that's why it's acting in a different way. Yeah.
Right. I don't see any new faces in the audience, so I figure everybody knows the routine. But in any case, we're having, how many more of these do we have? One more?
One more on the 18th, and we
Okay.
may need it depending on how long the presentations and discussion are tonight.
All right. So I will stop talking on that note and turn the mic over to Ellen.
Wonderful. Just in case I get parched. All right, so my recommendation I have in writing, so I'm just going to read it to you guys and apologize if it bores you to tears while I do that. All right, my recommendation is full removal of Montgomery Dam and return to the natural channel. Working in partnership with the Library Board of Trustees to incorporate the river into Harper Park in a manner that aligns with the Olmsted vision while simultaneously creating a more resilient shoreline with greater access to the water. And then my justification is broken down into the various aspects of resiliency that we have talked about in the last 2 years. So starting with historical, we have considered the watershed from a historical vantage point and accumulated a collection of varying thoughts on the subject. While some feel it is paramount to honor the industrial history of our community, Others prefer the scope of native or natural history. As a scientist, I am inclined toward the natural history of the watershed wherever we are able. I do believe there is something magical in maintaining landmarks of our human story and find efforts in preservation to be generally worthwhile. In this case, although I find the history of the dam to be interesting and compelling, I consider its negative impacts to outweigh its historical value. As a relic dam, no longer serving a utilitarian purpose, it marks a beautiful piece of history at the detriment to the health and well-being of the watershed ecosystem. Removal of the dam and a return to the natural path can more adequately honor the river's natural history. Paired with appropriate signage, river walks, and teaching opportunities, removal of the dam can continue to honor the industrial history of Camden and assure that the story of our past is not removed from our collective conscience. Ecosystem connectivity. While some consider the river to be healthy enough in its current state, evidence indicates that the dams significantly disrupt ecosystem connectivity by creating literal barriers and dividers within the natural habitat. Whether it is a river system like our own or on land, fragmented habitats are known to be detrimental to the overall health of a system. Across the country and around the globe, environmental groups, state and federal agencies are working to create contiguous habitats in an effort to restore resilient species populations, reducing isolated segmentation and increasing genetic diversity within the ecosystem. The removal of dams is additionally known to impact water flow patterns, resulting in improved nutrient and thermal distributions, creating a more hospitable habitat for organisms to survive and thrive.
Ellen? can
Yes.
you slow down just a little bit?
Sorry, yes. It's a lot. I didn't want to take up too much time.
No, but it's more important that.
Okay. In my ideal world, the removal of Montgomery Dam would be passed and swiftly followed by the removal of Knox and Knowlton Street dams to positively impact the ecosystem to the greatest extent possible. Flooding. As it has been stated in numerous discussions, the Montgomery Dam does not provide flood mitigation and instead poses increased risk over a free-flowing river. This is especially true for the buildings surrounding the impoundment who stand a greater flood risk with immediate proximity beside or above the impounded water. While dam removal does not mitigate the risk of downtown Camden flooding entirely, it does reduce the risk and diminishes the potential flood zone in size. While the flood models clearly show this positive impact of dam removal, they do not take into account the additional damage and flooding possibilities from debris or other items being caught in the dam, potentially exacerbating the issues of flooding further. For this reason, the flood models showing the impacts of dams seem conservative in their flood risk projections, if anything. As rain events increase in frequency, severity, and unpredictability, I believe our best course of action is to prepare for those changes and buffer our community against potential damages whenever and wherever we are able. Financial. As we all know, there is no option available that does not have a significant associated cost. From a financial perspective, removal of Montgomery Dam far outweighs the other options available. In every option, there is a substantial capital investment that cannot be ignored, but full removal of the dam would result in significantly lower ongoing maintenance and management costs. This choice allows us to remove the future financial burden from the shoulders of our children. When there is no dam to manage, there is no cost to manage it. Alternately, maintaining a relic dam for the sake of historical preservation or subjective aesthetics requires ongoing maintenance and repair costs without end. The removal of Montgomery Dam additionally opens the door to federal funding in a manner that significantly decreases the burden of cost to the local community. Showing state and federal agencies that we care about ecosystem connectivity and habitat restoration for sea-run fish opens the door to financial assistance at a magnitude that is irresponsible to turn down. Not only can funds be utilized for dam removal, but they can additionally help us to manage other issues upstream that will otherwise cause additional tax burdens to the community. The compounding cost of dam management for all of the town-owned dams is significant and ongoing and can be greatly reduced with federal assistance. Financial part 2. It has been proposed on more than one occasion that removing Montgomery Dam will have a negative economic impact on downtown businesses. This idea is often bolstered by the perception that the dam is the crown jewel of our community. Unfortunately, there has not been evidence that supports this thought, and I believe it to be speculative at best. In fact, keyword searches for tourism in Camden indicate that the dam is not amongst the most commonly highlighted experiences. Instead, visitors most frequently make note of wooden ships, the shops and restaurants of downtown, our hiking trails, state park, library, opera house, and church steeple. It is my personal belief, based on this information, that Camden will continue to thrive as a beautiful place to visit regardless of the dam's presence or lack thereof. It is additionally the case that removal of Montgomery Dam creates a gateway to new potential experiences that may well bolster the town's economic well-being. A free-flowing river returned to its natural path can allow greater access and integration into our daily lives. Paired with a reimagined seawall, the experience of Harbor Park could be one that includes both land and water as a seamless and integrated landscape to be utilized. Lower river levels along the impoundment open the potential for innovative concepts like river walks and educational access points. All of this to say that there simply is not evidence that removing Montgomery Dam will negatively impact the economic well-being of the community, and with a little imagination and creativity, it can potentially do quite the opposite. Finally, there is a real potential economic benefit made available by the presence of a large and healthy alewife population that can be considered for harvesting should the community choose to do so, creating a substantial revenue stream for years to come. Fish passage. The discussion around fish passage has gone in circles to near exhaustion, and there will be some who remain determined that sea-run fish never traverse these waters. There are others, of course, who simply don't care, and I honor that. If it isn't important to you, it doesn't have to be. That said, there is consensus among experts that Megunticook River was historically home to sea-run fish and is able to return to that natural state with our assistance. The return of alewives to the river ecosystem would result in significantly improved health and resilience of the watershed, and they are only one species that we have the potential to see return. There has been the question of increased seagulls and the concern that they would be a nuisance. But let me remind you that a river that supports sea-run fish, and alewives in particular, who are identified and known to be keystone species, provides nutrient-rich water in support of a long list of species who all benefit greatly from a healthy ecosystem. So while there may be more seagulls, we can also realistically anticipate more of the species we have subjectively determined to be more beautiful or worthwhile. More ospreys, more eagles, more cormorants and herons and terns, more cod in the harbor, more whales and seals and otters in their pursuit. As a fisheries biologist, I have observed and recorded the decline of species and species habitats for decades. Returning a river to its natural flow and reintroducing the ability for sea-run fish passage is a uniquely rare gift to improve the well-being of our environment and consequently our planet. While it may mean nothing to some, it genuinely means everything to others. And then just sort of a general ethical comment here. When I personally look at the deliberations around whether to keep or remove Montgomery Dam, I often feel that it boils down to two very different outlooks on life. The idea of keeping a dam that is no longer functional and has been identified as an impediment to the well-being of the river system it once relied on reads to me as a human-centric viewpoint. Do I honor our industrial history? Absolutely. And I believe we should continue to keep it alive in all of the reasonable ways that we are able. I am additionally sensitive to the fears that change brings, the worry around unknowns, and the stress that budding business owners have shared. We are not necessarily adept to embracing change and often feel that remaining in the comfort of what we have always done is safer and easier. This is a consistent human experience that I am not a stranger to, but I do not believe it should be paramount in guiding us. On the other hand, the idea of removing Montgomery Dam to aid in returning the river to its natural flow, to improve habitat connectivity, to reintroduce a healthy sea-run fish population, to reduce the risk of flooding along what is now a heavily inhabited watershed, and to diminish the ongoing cost for generations to come, feels like a proactive, sustainable, Earth-centric approach, one that benefits numerous species, including ourselves. It is my perception that we are faced with an opportunity to sacrifice a little bit of what we personally love to benefit the well-being of our community on a much greater scale. I believe it is our ethical responsibility to move forward with removing Montgomery Dam.
All right, thank you, Alan. So at this point, I'll open it up to the committee. Is there anybody who has a question or a response to Alan's presentation? I'd like to go first.
My usual question.
Okay.
Is there anything that we're not sure of? Is there any unintended consequence that maybe wouldn't change your opinion, but would give you pause or would lead to some protective activities?
I mean, I think there's always going to be some things that we're not sure of that we can't nail down. I don't think that there's anything in that subject that would change my decision on that. But certainly that we can't possibly know everything in the future. That's just not possible. So
I'm thinking of things that have been mentioned by others, like low water flow and other things. Would any successful outcome that you've anticipated be threatened by something unpredictable in the environment, for example?
I mean, there's definitely going to be times where there's low flow. There's no question. If you take the impoundment out, that sort of body of water will be less consistently high like it is. But that, I mean, I think you would be talking about a pretty significant drought for there to not be a river at all. And it's not something that we have seen before. So I don't see that on our near horizon unless, somebody else has weather reports that I haven't yet seen. But I think, yes, of course, we can anticipate low flow. Yeah. But it isn't the case that removing the impoundment would equate to no water. So.
That doesn't have to be our questions. It's just questions that we've heard over time. If they're appropriate, would be helpful to bring into the room. That's all.
And I wonder, the last meeting we had the displays.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
don't.
think
They
it
had
was
the
a little
library
wet.
I didn't bring them because it was wet. I also, they are online.
Okay.
We probably could bring them up and put them up on
That's a good idea.
Oh, on the screen?
the screen, yes.
Okay. That's not a
I'll
bad
see if
idea.
I can do that while you're.
Okay.
You know, you can call the
I'm
IT
sorry, I
department,
was
right?
gonna say I should.
Yes, if we were looking at the diagrams and it's not clear, I'm recommending option C.
Okay. I have a question. Did you consider, oh, thank you. Just trying to hide my coughing from the people online, but did you consider the middle approach of the lower dam with a fish ladder and or were you focused more on the sort of the binary between A and C? And why did you say no to the B option?
I would say I was more focused on A or C. The B option seemed like it was very costly and a compromise that didn't feel to me like those going for A or those going for C would choose. So if you put that on the ballot, then I think the people who want to keep the dam would still go for that. So it felt like a sort of a compromise that wasn't attainable, in my opinion.
Thank you. Tyler?
You talked about some people having a sacrifice by doing this, or who do you feel in our community would be sacrificing the most or losing the most if the dam went away?
Well, I guess probably the people who love the dam the most. I think that's a completely valid feeling to have, and saying goodbye to something that you love is difficult. So I think that's a personal sacrifice that people would be making. I also love the dam. I think it's a pretty cool piece of our history. I don't love it in the same way, so that sacrifice would not be as difficult for me. So I just want to be clear that I recognize that that's saying goodbye to something that you love is painful. So I understand that.
Any other comments or questions for Ellen?
I'm just going to say that since Deb's encouraging us to bring up unintended consequences, that one thing that's kept me up at night, it's like not really directed directly at your thing. Is that okay? All right. That we talked about really, really early on, because I was worried about it then, is whether or not in the future there would be some ability to get some kind of hydropower from such a small stream. And I worry that we will dismantle the dams and that will be, oh gosh, we should have dams to have hydropower. So I'm just saying that as a it does sort of keep me up at night sometimes. I have no idea where it belongs in this conversation, or if it does. I've been told that that's not at all like possible, feasible engineering wise, and it's not something to think about. But anyway, just putting that out there.
The Seabright Dam was the only one that was used as hydropower.
Right.
Well, there was.
Well,
Wasn't it?
except for the mills.
Well, the
there
mills,
was-
but I mean in
obviously
recent
the mills,
history.
Right.
In recent history.
I think the Knoxville Dam was used in fairly
Oh,
recent
yeah.
history as well.
Well, 60s.
When there's a lot of water going over it, it's got a lot of water going over it.
Do you think, Elfie, do you think this committee hasn't done enough research to understand the, I mean, the nice thing is you have very easily someone that studies that thing could tell you how many kilowatts of power you have.
Right.
And it would be good for you to equate that to like, that's equivalent to putting solar panels on the Hannaford in Camden, or, you know, it'd be nice to understand like
That's true. Yeah.
perhaps the hydraulic potential of
Mhm.
that particular dam, and maybe even the Knox Dam as well, since that was to understand, to put it into some sort of, it's equivalent to 3 regular homeowners putting, like, I'd feel very different if it was equivalent to 3 homes putting solar panels on their houses versus someone said, oh, the potential there is for 1,000 homes to put solar panels on their houses. I would kind of go, oh, wow, there's quite a bit of potential there.
Right.
It's easier to weigh it against whatever taking
The
the dams down
alternative.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
The benefits that come from that in terms of flooding, for example.
And yet it's my understanding, the reason they abandoned the hydro at Seabright was because it was expensive to run
Right.
and costly to maintain. Now, maybe in light of
I was
what
going to say
is.
if Mike wanted to.
I was going to say, Mike
And so this
answered that
is-
question
yeah,
earlier.
Right.
All right. Do somebody with good eyes close to the screen want to read that?
Town manager.
Yeah.
She doesn't just have to give updates.
Before Mike gets on there, I've always wondered, and not really brought it up, is whether Montgomery Dam would produce enough power just to power a couple of electrical vehicle charging stations down at the public landing, which would be a very unique, interesting use.
Yeah.
But I'm not an engineer or electrical engineer. I don't want to electrocute anybody.
Well,
In that vein, there is an engineer who has a comment, Mike Burke, who is in the, if you see the little number 1 under chat, do you mind clicking that so we can?
could be studied, though, if desired, to have addressed.
So his first comment said something about there's not enough capacity.
Right. Yeah, I feel like we do have some of this information already.
We did.
Yeah.
I asked it early on, and that was
It's
the
right
answer
there.
I got. Yeah.
There it is.
The site is extremely limited hydroelectric power generation potential and would not ever pay for the capital investment required.
Okay.
Could be
Fair
studied though, if desired, to have addressed conclusively.
Okay.
So, yeah, my understanding was exactly what Susan said, and that is when we toured, and I really enjoyed going down into that dam and seeing the generators, but it seemed like there's a reason that nobody is disputing as to why they lay dormant.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I would think about, does that benefit, if there is one even, outweigh the benefit to flood resilience?
Yeah, I guess I would
Right.
say even if it did have a decent energy potential, I think my recommendation would still be the same
Yeah.
because of the trade-off. And it is the case that other dams around the country that do have significantly more power generation are also going down for the same reason, and they're figuring out other ways to get that energy source. So,
Well, and then you still would have the added maintenance and licensing.
Right.
Of the dam if it were turned into a hydro.
Yeah, I mean, my
So,
guess is we can
yeah.
probably draw something from the fact that our town has intentionally, with ownership of a dam with a greater hydraulic potential, being the Seabright Dam, has decided not to pursue power generation at that dam.
Right. Okay.
I would assume that if Otter was sitting on a potential cash cow, they would have.
It wasn't financially viable. There were a bunch of state incentives for renewable power generation that were removed in 2018. So It wouldn't have been financially viable after 2018, but even before that, the capital upgrade that needed to happen to all the electrical and mechanical equipment meant that it was just never going to be cost effective to generate power there.
Okay.
In Seabright. And also there's a person in this room who installed a power generation facility at a small relic
Mhm.
dam, or new technology. And I think that they would probably, report that it wasn't a cost effective venture.
As long, if that's, I prefer not to break the seal of, until later if there's time. So, but thank you. We'll make a note of that and circle back. So other concerns about unintended consequences that it's worth fleshing out, or other comments or questions about Ellen? Fleshing. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Our next recommender is Ray.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to say a couple of preface things here. I feel honored to be a member of the Megunticook River Citizens Advisory Committee and to have participated with all of you in our deliberations during the past 28 months. As you know, I am also a member of the Save the Dam Falls Committee, and I have steadfastly tried to challenge the idea that our historic Montgomery Dam and waterfall must be destroyed forever for the sake of introducing alewives and other sea-run fish into the Megunticook River watershed. Throughout this process, I had hoped we could find a compromise solution that accomplished both. But like Ellen mentioned, scenario B clearly isn't the answer, and scenario C destroys our dam and waterfall forever. Therefore, it should come as no surprise to this committee that I am in favor of scenario A, and that I would recommend to the Camden Select Board the following wording for the June 2025 warrant: that the town of Camden preserve Montgomery Dam, restore the dam and its waterfall as originally designed by the Olmsted Brothers, and maintain the dam, its reflecting pool, and the waterfall cascading into Camden Harbor for future generations to enjoy. I make this recommendation based on the following: Montgomery Dam, the reflecting pool, and the waterfall cascading into our harbor are part of what makes Camden special, just like the tower on Mount Batty and the lighthouse on Curtis Island. No other place in coastal Maine or elsewhere on the East Coast, as far as I know, has a waterfall cascading directly into the ocean. This is a special feature enjoyed by local citizens, visitors in all seasons, artists and photographers, and boaters who pass through our harbor or dock here for extended periods. There has been a dam on this site for more than 250 years, and construction of the current Olmsted design dam, which is approaching its 100th anniversary, was approved and financed by Camden's greatest benefactor, Mary Louise Curtis Bach, to complement the natural beauty of Harbor Park. Because of the Olmsted connection alone, our Montgomery Dam should be worthy of historic preservation. Moreover, there are still too many unknowns for us to sacrifice a treasure like Montgomery Dam as a condition for this $20 million river resiliency project. There is reportedly a limit of $8 million on grants to be issued by NOAA this spring. How do we vote to proceed when we have no knowledge of where the other $12 million or more is going to come from? And how do you spend a partial funding? Is Montgomery Dam destroyed first for no reason at all? Who decides? What is the local share going to be? There will be one for sure. How can we proceed if we don't know the amount? How can we ask voters to decide on the dam's future when we don't know the impact on our local property taxes or what staffing requirements will be to maintain the fish ladders, to clear out the dead alewives, and to keep the system functioning? What if no more federal money follows, especially under the Trump administration? What do we do then? Saving the dam and restoring it is clearly the least expensive option by far. Why can't we be upfront about this? Furthermore, there are no engineering documents for review, yet we are asked to vote in favor of a project by deciding to destroy Montgomery Dam forever. When we eventually get these documents, they will be mostly for removing man-made structures like dams and creating man-made fish ladders. The river will not be returned to a natural state as implied. As for flood resiliency, Montgomery Dam is not the issue, despite claims made by some citizens during this process. The interfluve reports state quite clearly that Montgomery Dam does not create a flood risk in downtown Camden. In addition, we don't know what problems will be created by removing Montgomery Dam and introducing natural or unnatural fish passage in downtown Camden. What happens to the businesses overlooking the reflecting pool behind Montgomery Dam? Will their structures remain sturdy and safe? Will their clientele increase or decrease? Will the town have to compensate business owners for their economic losses? How about damages to private property? Will there be an increase in dead fish in downtown Camden, and how will that affect our businesses and tourism? Will more seagulls and other scavengers become a nuisance around Harbor Park, the library, Main Street, and Camden Harbor itself? I also agree with comments made by Rick Thackeray last week that this whole situation would have been better if the entire community had been engaged from the start. Instead, Camden bypassed the normal, well-tested planning process that requires broad community involvement at the outset and public discussion leading to clear problem identification. This is the normal procedure, one being used by Camden Can now as it tackles a widely accepted need to protect Camden Harbor from rising seawater levels. Proper community involvement would likely have led to a different conclusion. It would have focused on locally defined needs, not wants, based on the attraction of federal funds that include fish passage as a prerequisite. It would have considered the town's comprehensive plan, including its capital budget item for restoration of Montgomery Dam. It would have been aware of the town's true priorities: stormwater control, affordable housing, seawall protection. Instead, we have come down to a referendum vote in June that will determine the fate of our historic, picturesque, and treasured Montgomery Dam and waterfall. I also want to add a personal note, and this is a lot of personal stuff too, but when I first came to Camden in 1986, I remember sitting on the back deck of the Smiling Cow, was sipping a cup of coffee and looking out at the dam, the waterfall, and the harbor, and fell in love with Camden. And I think there are many other people who have had that same experience. And I think future generations could have that same type of experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Questions or comments based on Ray's presentation?
I'm curious, so the initial costs of taking down the dam are low compared to the
Compared to the others. Yeah.
restoration. What about those costs that, about maintenance into the future? What do you say about that?
There will be maintenance in the future, maintenance costs of roads and everything else. You're going to have that. And even taking the dam away doesn't mean that we're not going to have maintenance costs in that area of the town. With the seawall, we don't know if taking the dam away and the crush of water is going to come towards the wall along Harbor Park. We don't know. And that wall has had granite blocks and everything coming out of it for how long? And that could still continue. Not saying that, and if we see that when the sluice gate is open, you have that much pressure coming up against the wall. All of that pressure, or a lot of it, will be coming up. I'm not a hydrologist, but a lot of it will be coming up against that wall.
Along those lines, I thought I heard you say that the full dam removal might be $20 million. Where did you get that?
I didn't.
number?
Oh, that was the whole project. No, that was the
The
whole
dam
river
removal?
project. No, the whole river
Oh, the
project.
whole-
That was
yeah,
what I
where
was
is that
talking about.
number?
I thought that was coming from our original estimates, and we haven't got a new estimate. We have not received a new estimate from Interfluve as to what the cost is going to be. It's not been updated since, 4 years ago?
Okay, so that would be removal for lower dams.
Yes, that would be for the whole, that would be for the whole
Passage.
project, the whole project,
Don't
not
remember
just,
that, but-
not just Montgomery Dam, but I mean, this whole project is with the beginning step is going to be Montgomery Dam, either it's saved or not saved.
I'm curious how you came to the conclusion that maintaining the dam initially and over time would be the least expensive. That seems to fly in the face of the studies. And so I'm wondering what led you away from the conclusion from the studies to this one?
I am not a financial person. No, really, I'm serious, okay?
Okay.
And when you start looking at the entire cost of the whole project and balance that against the cost of keeping and maintaining the dam, Montgomery Dam, I think you're going to see the comparison. And, we don't know what the future costs are going to be, but of that entire project.
Well, there are estimates of that in the reports. That's
Right.
all I was
Yeah.
wondering, whether you were drawing on additional information.
No.
And I had a second question, if I can.
Sure.
Your statement that the river will not be returned to a natural state as implied. And you reference, I
Fish
think,
ladders.
fish ladders,
Right,
but
putting in man-made fish ladders is not natural.
no, but from the harbor up to the East-West and Seabright dams would be.
Yeah, there
There
would
wouldn't be
not
any
be
other
C.
dams.
Yeah, I had the same question because the way that you stated it made it sound like if you were to go with option C, there would be fish passage added to this part of the river, but that wouldn't be the case.
I'm sorry. Option C.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to remove Montgomery Dam, then, like as Deb said, there aren't any proposals for fish ladders until you get to Seabright Dam.
Right.
So this whole part going through town would not have any. There wouldn't be any in Harbor Park. There wouldn't be any going through town.
Right, but this project is more than just.
Well, no, I was just clarifying because the way that you stated it made it kind of sound like you meant down at the harbor,
No,
so it was more of a clarifying.
But I think it's also good to note that even a option C natural is going to be a highly engineered waterway. There will be plans where they will say, we need pockets here, we need rocks here, because all of those elements are gone out of the landscape. And so what you will end up with is it'll appear to someone who may be coming here as a tourist or someone that sees something when it's matured 5 or 10 years down the line as a natural waterway, but you've really reintroduced a lot of hydraulic elements that were not there. It's going to be what would happen to the Montgomery Dam, that section. And I think probably the best spot to explain it would be from Route 1, probably up under, past River Ducks. And that stretch basically has been, first of all, who knows whether the river is even close to some of its original. I think that stretch has been stripped of it. I mean, if you go walk that during low water, the biggest rock you find is like a brick.
Yeah.
And so I think for that stretch to make it any sort of an effective, I think would be a highly engineered stretch of water where they're physically bringing rocks in and digging out, maybe even blasting, maybe some sort of,
I would make
ledge
clear
removal.
from my own perspective that I would not be in favor of that. I agree that having to change the pathway in some ways is very likely, but saying that I am for removing the dam is not the same as saying I am for blasting all the way up to make it a whatever kind of ideal passageway. Because I agree that that's sort of the same problem in the opposite direction. So I want to be clear that that's not,
But is that an answer that then has to be given, whether or not that would be required?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we talked months ago about the idea of if you had to blast to make the gradient lower or anything like that. And I think I stated at that time that if we're returning it to natural, that's as far as I personally would like to go. I don't think going beyond that to an extent where it's now altered in some other way I think that sort of goes against the sort
Are
of
you
principle.
okay with the addition of things? You have an issue more with ledge removal as opposed to.
I mean, that
bringing-
concept of
bringing
blasting
rocks
sounds
in.
pretty unappealing to me, but yeah.
I think just to that point, we're talking really about Montgomery Dam here, but the Knox Mill Dam, there probably will have to be some ledge removal there or put in a fish passage, possibly. We don't know. We don't know. But I think that is one of the other things as far as the natural part of it.
So Ellen,
not
on
gonna
that,
be
on that
blasting,
natural,
Ellen.
so Ellen, on that natural element,
Mhm.
not to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
but if in the removal of the Knox Dam,
Hmm.
it's determined that the ledge is such that it's still a impediment to fish passage, are you open to modifying that to
I'm open
Is it-
to
is
it. I'm
it-
just saying this was not my ideal situation.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I just think we have
I
to be
just wanted to
careful, yeah.
clarify that I'm not for that level of extreme,
It
but
wasn't a
obviously
negative, yeah.
it's a group discussion. It's not just my own feelings. So it's,
I think it was more just a comment that sometimes use the term natural, and it's probably more
Right,
like,
yeah, and I
it's probably
understand
the
it.
word
More like a nature-like.
Nature-like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Naturalized.
no, and I understand that and I appreciate that clarification.
No, and they've made it clear that something like that would have to be done in the harbor if they were to find close to the original channel.
Well, right, if you're going to take out where the fill is,
Right.
there's
Mhm.
going to have to be.
Yeah, but further up the
Removal,
river,
yeah.
we haven't heard anything.
No.
Along those lines.
And
It
what,
would be good to know.
and this conversation sort of moved off as a tangent from
Sorry.
the question of maintenance costs. Because I don't think that there's anything that's been said in the last 10 minutes that actually says that there will be new maintenance costs arising from dam removal. It's the maintenance costs, and if we're talking apples to apples, that's the question. Are there maintenance costs with dam removal versus keeping the dam and needing to maintain it either in a B or a or an A
But
configuration?
Rick, I think there are in the studies. It's just that they're less.
Well, what in terms of maintaining a nature-like
No.
passageway?
Yeah, because
But
there
there's
was,
dam
there was
for all
conversation that just the flow of water and other things may shift. And it's not daily or weekly or monthly maintenance.
Mhm.
It's over time. There would have to be some care given to that
Right.
nature-like.
Okay.
Right, because in Solmesville, I know that they do go in periodically and they do readjust some of the, and I think also in Damascotta.
Right.
They go in and adjust some of the pools and the weirs.
There's maintenance,
Right.
from what I know, Damascotta, there is maintenance on that fish ladder there every year.
Right, but that's much more engineered
a
than what
fish
we're
ladder.
That's
talking
much
about.
more
It's much
engineered
engineered.
than what I have envisioned.
Right.
But I sort of consider the maintenance that you're talking about with this fishway as more sort of like emergency
Yeah.
mitigation kind of stuff rather than ongoing planned maintenance that's required. I mean, certainly if there's a huge storm that brings lots of water through town and washes away things, then you have to deal with that. But that's,
Or lots
I
of
feel, I
debris
feel
that
like that's
goes-
kind of a different category, but maybe I'm,
No, that was my understanding when I looked at the studies. I just
Yeah.
didn't think to bring them tonight.
Well, I guess Mike dropped out for whatever reason, but I think there was a question he was gonna answer and he's back in.
oh, gotcha, okay.
All right.
Sorry.
How do we? I hope he knows what question he was going to respond to.
It had something to do with blasting.
Something to
Oh,
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, great.
Go for it, Mike.
He's.
So is he going to come back
So you're
on?
coming
I
back?
saw his head, and then it went away and was replaced with his name again.
He may not be able to unmute himself though,
Oh.
because it says ask to unmute.
Right.
Oh, Deb, we're waiting for Mike.
I think he's trying to do a couple things. Sorry, and I'm also with kids.
Oh my
Can you
God.
hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God.
But I asked him to respond to the question about the over-engineered option and the potential for blasting, because that's come up a couple times, as well as the cost estimates. We have updated those, and I'll make sure that you guys all have those from Interfluve, and then we tried to simplify them a little bit. So just easier to read, but I know that he's doing a couple things, and so he'll come back on. And if you guys want to ask him about the blasting or the naturalized or over-engineered thing, then feel free. But otherwise, continue the conversation.
Thank you.
I think
Can't figure out the buttons,
Well,
sorry.
and I think I misunderstood it because you would be asking him to unmute himself, I guess.
And I have one comment about the 20 million. I mean, because the Knox and Knowlton are privately owned,
Yes.
that portion would not be part of Camden's expenses. Where at least I would not think that they would have to worry about maintaining or applying for those grants. There will be maintenance, obviously, with which Camden will have to pay for on the Seabright and the east and west,
Yes.
regardless
Right.
of,
Right.
so that
Mhm.
really needs
Yeah.
to be included
Mhm.
in the maintenance, and that will not go away one way or the other. There may be increased maintenance if we have to put in fish ladders,
Mhm.
but that maintenance also may go away if we have less time spent opening the gates or closing the gates or clearing trash racks. I mean, I don't know, but just one thing to
Right.
consider.
Mike, did you have a comment with regarding how often blasting's used or what kind of reconstruction looks like on these? You know, we were having discussion that it's not really, I think it's a nature-like, you'll be producing a nature-like river in the event of the Montgomery Dam removal.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so with cases like this, you know, and how the option is been carried forward in option C, you know, typically the approach is, you know, you need to get everything off the historical bedrock and historical river course there, and you know, there may be the need to do some adaptations, you know, based on you know, the legacy of disturbance and whatnot at the site, but typically blasting type of operations are reserved for very major types of situations, and so the refinements you would do here are more along the lines you'd use you know, a hydraulic, you know, essentially a large jackhammer type operation, hydraulic hammer to do some fine tuning there to, you know, sort of optimize the passage conditions. But it's really always best to, you know, get everything off the underlying structure first and then respond to that, as opposed to over designing or over engineering something based on you know, just the knowledge you can gain before actually doing that project. So I don't know if that's helpful. Yeah, so there wouldn't be a major like blasting operation, but there would, you know, we would carry forward the assumption that there could be the need to do some adaptation of the underlying bedrock there. But overall, it, you know, will end up being a very naturalized condition. You know, we can provide, you know, several examples of very similar approaches where there was a little bit of that adaptation, you know, once the structures and whatnot, the fill were off the site, how that ended up looking at the end.
Mike, sorry. Go ahead. I was going to steer in a different directions, but I do have a question for him after.
It was just, Mike, I don't know whether you heard talking as part of that same conversation about the kind of maintenance that might be needed for that nature-like fish passage in the harbor, whether it's occasional, particularly storm-related, whether there's routine maintenance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it'd be very rare for the channel itself, but you know, the channel itself would be predominantly on so you know, there could be the, you know, the need to do a little bit of adaptation after, you know, after being in service, you know, for a year or two, just based on observations on how everything is going, but probably not significant. And then, you know, but there nevertheless would be built features around, relative to how the park would be adapted, and the seawall, and things that are built features. As you know, all built features will have maintenance, at some point, and so I don't think you would be looking too much at the channel itself there. There'd be very limited maintenance there. It'd be free flowing, and you wouldn't have issues with debris accumulations and things like that, because the river is the fish passage. And you're not trying to put a portion of the river into a smaller area to make fish passage, which is what you do with a fish ladder. And those are the areas where you end up getting debris and stuff. But the other adjacent areas along the park, the seawall and paths and things like that, you would design those to be as resilient as possible. But, and climatic events and things like that, you'll need to, certainly think about maintaining those built features in the future, but not so much the river chain.
So-
Thank you.
Mike, I had a question about another portion of Ray's recommendation, and I'm going to admit I haven't read and annotated your interfluve report, and he said something in the report, something about how the Montgomery Dam serves no flood. It does nothing with respect to flood risk, and that was from the interfluve report. And Mike, if you hold on,
Question.
Ray is going to pull up what his comment was, and I just was wondering if you could respond to it,
The
please.
report state quite clearly the Montgomery Dam does not create a flood risk in downtown Camden.
Do you have a response to that, Mike?
Montgomery Dam elevates, the peak flood levels, depending on the event, 10 feet, as much as 10 feet. So it elevates the flood levels in the area of its influence, which extends from Montgomery Dam up to essentially the Brewster Building, which is downstream of Washington Street. So the dam clearly influences the water levels up through there. And then it kind of comes down to, I hate to say it, but it comes down to some definitions of what a flood is. And so I think if inundating, the storage unit, just upstream of the dam is considered, flood or a flood impact, then, the dam definitely creates conditions where that, gets inundated. As it stands, the finished floor elevations of the buildings upstream of the Montgomery Dam is above the FEMA base flood elevation, which is based on, no debris getting caught in the pilings and, all that kind of stuff, ice effects and things like that. So taking the dam out, like the flood waters definitely get all up and through the building and building foundations and things like that. Those elevations are up there, but as far as the finished floor elevation, where people are walking, those elevations for the most part are above, the current map flood levels.
Okay.
So
Is it fair though to say that what's a good word? That you would bristle at the characterization of your report as relates to what it says about flood risk and Montgomery Dam?
Well, I guess I would just say that that Montgomery Dam clearly impacts all water levels upstream of it over the extent from where it is up to the Brewster Building. For the very specific flood event that is the FEMA flood, the buildings are above that level. And then the dam, it kind of comes down to definitions, unfortunately. And so, Montgomery Dam doesn't impact
All right. The Rising Tide Co-op is interfering with your, but thank you, Mike.
We couldn't hear that, Mike.
So I think at this point, we're going to try to, let's,
Susan,
one
I
comment?
have one.
oh, you had a mic question? Okay.
When the mill pond, if the sluice gate is not opened soon enough and the mill pond raises up to the top of the dam, do you know if any of the businesses are at risk of flooding their lower areas?
I think the only building is the Smiling Cow, where they have that additional lowered
Lower.
area,
Okay,
which the water, what I've seen is the water does get up to about the bottom of that, all right? As far as my knowledge, I don't think they've ever filed any kind of a insurance claim for water damage or whatever.
well, I know the water level also gets high up north, I guess, west of Main Street,
Right.
along Leather Bench as well, up along their window, right along the side sometimes. And I just wonder if we know if any of those businesses
If the-
have
On the
been,
Leather Bench, I think if the water got up that high, it's also coming over Main Street. And the other building,
no, there's a window that's low.
there's a window that's
down-
low, yes. okay,
Down in the
all right,
basement.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
and I
No,
know
no,
the sill
Arthur-
is rotten.
Arthur has
Look
never
at
said
it.
anything about it.
But I know that, at least it's my understanding, that there have been calls to the town to raise the sluice gate so that the mill pond is not super high when we have a high rain event because of potential flooding. But I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
I-
Okay.
Can I just mention one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Courtney.
think it's really important to keep mentioning that these models are current estimates. They're not including future precipitation increases.
Right.
And so we need to remember that whenever we talk about flooding. Because I do agree that the definition of flooding is a little complicated, especially because there's so many changes that are coming that are unknown.
Good point.
Yeah, and, just getting back to, the assumptions are also, clear water conditions without debris and things like that. So, if, in a comparative sense, if the water levels are lower to start, for more wiggle room, more factor of safety. And if they're higher, then you have less of that. So, that's one other thing just to keep in mind, it's less directly a very specific, precise flood definition, but kind of gets more back towards resiliency and flexibility and maintaining the area, keeping impacts low.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any other responses to Ray's recommendation and comments? Go ahead, Tyler.
So I think you bring up a lot of good stuff when it comes to what a vote looks like and what it contains. I think there's a lot of unknowns that I think the select board will probably, unfortunately, be tasked with as far as when they send things to the voters. What does it look like? How do they put a money sign to it? How do they put constraints as far as impact to the voters and their taxes?
Right.
What do you think? And I haven't asked this of other people, but if your wording for the select board was to go directly to the referendum, what do you think a no vote would mean?
Good question.
Yes.
That's a good question. All right, now I've got to look and see what I recommend.
I think the same question for,
Yeah, right, the other way.
I'd
Yeah.
love to know, for me, the other direction, if the recommendation was to.
Right.
For me, if the recommendation was to remove the dam.
Right.
I would read a no vote as
Keep it.
keep it.
Right.
Oh, boy.
Right, and the opposite.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure I had that.
I just don't know how you would,
Well-
what you would perceive a
Well-
no vote on.
To me, a no vote would mean that the majority of citizens have decided to get rid of Montgomery Dam instead of save it. What I said here was preserve the dam.
Yeah, I think that's dangerous though for that. I mean, you can couch it in a way
I
that will
don't,
be
this is
exactly
my
what you want.
recommendation
Yeah,
to the
right.
select board. I don't anticipate that that's going to be the wording or whatever, but I do believe that we're going to have a vote in June that's going to determine the fate of Montgomery Dam. keep it, or I'll use the word destroy it, but remove it.
Yeah.
And this is something that the citizens of Camden, or on both sides of the issue, have called for, what, 5 years ago, 4 years ago? It seems like we've been here forever, on a decision on Montgomery Dam.
Do you think it would be better to have two referendums on there? One that would be keeping the dam and the other would be removing the dam. And
What do you do?
they would be competing. This was encountered by a couple of states in the last election.
Mhm.
And I think what the state attorney general on these particular issues, this wouldn't be state attorney general, but was whichever one passed at a higher level was implemented.
Well, if you recall what happened with the petitions that were presented to the select board, I'm going to say 4 years ago, it seems like
Sure.
a generation ago. The Save the Dam Falls Committee presented a petition to be put on the ballot to save Montgomery Dam. And the
Restore Megunticook.
Restore Megunticook group presented another petition that was in the opposite. And
Sure.
the town attorney basically said, we can't put this onto the ballot.
Right.
Because you have two different ones opposing, really opposing decisions.
Right.
And what do you do if they both pass? Or what do you do? You don't accomplish anything
Sure.
if both of them fail.
Do you think the referendum should contain the verbiage for what would happen to the Montgomery Dam if it did not pass? So the referendum might say, for example, your wording would be to repair,
Preserve and
repair
repair
the
and
existing
maintain.
dam.
Right.
If this is a no vote on this, or if this does not pass, it means that the dam would be removed.
I think that's kind of obvious in there.
No,
it wouldn't
I think
be.
it's,
should
That
be in
way,
there.
that way people would know
Right.
Right.
Be explicit.
I
consequences. of
I
it.
think that's important to have.
I think it is important to have, okay? And I do think that there's, whatever this committee presents to the select board as far as a recommendation, the select board is going to have to work on the wording of that so that the citizens, hopefully the citizens know what they're voting for and that you can come to a clear decision one way or the other.
And do you envision if the citizens vote to save the dam, that you're also then allowing the town to move forward and with that expense of repairing and restoring it?
I think in the footnotes, or whatever you want to call it, the explanation for a vote, the town would have to put in, but maybe not in the actual wording of the warrant, but in the explanation below it,
The cost.
what the cost, perceived cost is going to be. All right?
I mean, I just wonder when you end up with like Dover Foxcroft, who
Mhm.
thought
Right,
that theirs would be 2 million
Right.
and now perhaps you're looking at 8 million.
Mhm. Right.
I think that's something that
Right.
the tax voters need to be aware
Yeah.
of.
And I think also, if I'm trying to remember what that article really said, but I think what they were looking at was a $20 million cost to take away that dam and turn the whole area into a park.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, numbers will change, but
Absolutely.
I think it'd be, the responsibility of the select board to basically come up with a number for what it's going to cost. Yes.
Any other responses or questions for Ray?
I have a question.
Sure.
Go ahead. If you wanted to say
Well,
something.
one thing I want to add to that too is, in the same thing is that if the future of Montgomery Dam has an effect on this whole river restoration project, there is a cost there too. And that's what I tried to get into these points that I made, is that there is going to be a match. We don't know how much federal funding from different organizations is going to be available in the future. We have estimates on what the long-term maintenance costs are. I mean, we've had, I think, what Audra prepared was a 50-year maintenance estimate for
Mhm.
Montgomery Dam. Obviously, there are the same things for Seabright and East-West, but there's going to be 50-year maintenance costs for parts of the river, no matter how naturalized it is.
Yes, I agree.
Just one note, there is no matching requirement. So it is possible that it would be fully paid for.
Okay.
Just want to know.
Currently,
Currently.
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 What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it could change. It could, they
January
could,
20th.
yeah, they could say, okay, we'll give you this if you
Mhm.
do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how in stone that is for the
well,
grant.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
The money that's already been kind of allocated, the stipulation might be set in stone. I'm not sure.
We don't know, but
think it
what
might
this group has talked about appending to whatever decision we make,
Mhm.
a provision that's dependent upon the funding being available, particularly if we recommend C,
Yes.
that the recommendation depends upon receiving the funding. If the funding
Right.
is not available,
Yeah.
then they'd have to come up with a series of estimates for what it was, what's going to come out of our pockets.
Mhm.
I mean, that's come up more than once.
I'm curious,
Sure, yes.
Ray, and I'm going to totally botch what your wording was on this, but it seemed like some part of what you presented was a perception that maybe there's a majority of people in town that agree with your perspective. Do you feel like that's true?
I haven't canvassed everybody in town, but I do know that there is a large number of people, citizens in town, who will vote to save Montgomery Dam, no matter what. Okay, and I'm, that's a very, I don't know, bad way to say that, because you don't know how people are going to vote.
Right. I guess,
That's your sense.
No.
no, but I guess
But-
the part that I'm
Okay.
the part that I'm curious about is, I mean, we know that this committee has some members on it that arrived with already a side that they were on, you being one, Courtney being one,
Mhm.
who already have a pretty clear
Yeah.
idea of what they wanted. I would say for the majority of the rest of us, that wasn't really the case. I mean, I know when I arrived, I really didn't
Yes.
have very much knowledge on it at all, and definitely didn't have an agenda of my own one way or another. And I think that for me, that sort of presents a concept that if you were to erase all of us and put 9 more committee members from town with the same information and the same process, there seems to be a majority of us who have taken that information and gone one direction with it. And so I'm curious if there really is a significant number of people who feel the same way as you do, or if it's potentially the people that you spend time with. And that might be the case for me also, because I mean, I probably surround myself with like-minded people. So I'm curious about that piece of it. And there's maybe not even an answer to it. I'm just
No,
brought some thoughts
what
in
I
my brain.
can say is that, going back to talking about the petitions, we had no trouble getting 500 people to sign that petition. And I know that the opposing group got a little bit more than 500.
Right.
So you got, in this town, you have two views of this issue. And I know a lot of people that I've talked to around town, and other people have told me, no, don't want to destroy Montgomery Dam. I want to keep Montgomery Dam and basically, find a way to do it. And for the last 4 years, we have had a sign-up sheet at the election table for people to sign up for our newsletter. But, the minute you start saying it's for saving the dam, I'll sign it. Now, I am sure that you could have the same type of thing and get a number of people to do the same number of people to do it. This is a very divisive issue in this town.
Completely, yeah.
It's a very divisive issue. And I think when it comes down to a vote, it's going to be on emotion and financial. And I don't think, I'm just saying, there are people who will vote on it for the alewives and stuff, but it's really going to come down to the emotional connection with Montgomery Dam and the financial cost of doing one or the other.
Ray, given that that's in your head,
Yes.
you believe that.
Yeah.
What is your estimated value of all the outreach we did? The public information we've tried to share, the knowledge about the system, has that been wasted?
I won't say anything we've done has been wasted, but I would say, and I didn't put this into what I presented, but I don't think we have really canvassed the people who are going to be most affected by a river restoration. Those being the ones who own property on all of the to be affected properties,
Like the impoundments?
like the impoundments especially, but also around the lake and around the Seabright Dam impoundment, or whatever you want to call it, the homeowners there. Do they want all new fish, and I'm going to use the word introduced, into, because these alewives and everything haven't been there since they've lived there. Do they want them in their lake? Do they want them in that river channel? We haven't really canvassed, actually gone door to door to find out what they want or what they envision. And this is going to be imposed on them, and it's going to be, have an effect, negative or positive, on their property values.
Well, in fairness to the future that's coming roaring at us, the plan is to have some small gatherings, things that we were promised would happen almost a year ago. They're still on the drawing board, and there are some of us who feel very strongly about it.
And I think something, Deb, I think something to think about is, there's probably 50 different criteria that keeping the dam versus removing the dam have, and every person is going to have a different weight to those criteria.
Right.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so what your weights are versus what Ray's are, you guys probably would actually agree on almost all the information. It's just that
It's salient.
it's just that you put a different weight to something that he doesn't.
There are some things that are salient to me that aren't to him. No question.
There's an interesting book out right now, Nexus by Yuval Harari, about information and getting into artificial intelligence and everything. And information is not truth. It's just information, and it's how you perceive it, how you exchange it.
Well, let's have a conversation about what truth is.
You guys want to talk about the election that just happened?
I mean, this could go on forever.
This is part of what I enjoyed about being part of this process and being, in many ways, the lone champion for Montgomery Dam. But
We have plenty of backers.
Ray, I had a question about something else that you said in your recommendation a couple of times. You referenced the impact of dam removal on the seawall and how the seawall is a part of the dam infrastructure. And I want to ask, Mike, I have a specific question about that. And that is that we've had, back to kind of what we were just talking about, we've had a lot of representations by the library board who controls the seawall and about, it's not your business. It's our business. The Olmsted Trust people as well. And they've been in communication with the library board. And I'm wondering if the folks that you work with closely on Save the Dam Falls, whether they also have that misconception.
First, I don't think it was in the presentation. It was in response to a question about maintenance. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. And repeat exactly what you're asking as far as.
It's not a part of the dam, and anything that we decide to recommend to the school board, select board, to have the voters vote on, will have no substance related to the seawall. And I'm wondering if the way you characterize it, that's the way I heard it. Did I mishear you? And if so, correct the record there. And I'm wondering if that is what you think, is that belief system shared by the other folks in Save the Dam Falls?
I don't think so, but there are some members here. You can ask them later on.
Oh, no.
I know. But the only reference I made to the seawall was in the ending of this, where I talked about it would have been aware, you're talking about the population of the town, been aware of the town's true priorities, stormwater control, affordable housing, and seawall protection.
But I think it is important to discuss. I would agree with you to some extent, but on the other hand, I would say my definition of the seawall that would not be impacted by either of these decisions would be from the landing ramp to the American Boathouse. I would say as you start to proceed from the landing ramp closer to the Montgomery outflow, every block of granite, I have less and less confidence that it might be affected by.
Well, certainly that
It's
would be the case. If
definitional,
if
too.
you are changing the channel to where its historic path is, then there's no question there would be a wall in the way of that if you were to do that. So there's no question that part would be impacted. I think you said something along the lines of free flowing river, like putting pressure on the wall.
Yeah.
Which was confusing to me, but I think that's the way I've perceived and this is again, maybe a separate discussion, but how the library board might move forward with the wall is moving it more towards stair-stepped sort of, less of a wall, more of a gradual entrance into the water. And I am having a hard time envisioning how free-flowing water would impact that negatively, but maybe I can't see exactly what you're seeing in your mind.
Well, I think the pictures or the drawings that we have for option C, showing the removal of Montgomery Dam, it also removes the sluiceway.
Yeah,
sluice gate
that's
and
my
everything.
point.
Yeah.
Sluiceway
That's a
is-
different
And that,
thing.
and there, the channel of water is going to, unless you start blasting away the whole ledge, is going to be up right against that portion
Oh,
of
I
the
see. So you're,
wall
okay.
that's there.
So you're
and
saying if
coming
you
down-
remove
and
the
coming
dam, but the
down
water.
towards- So that's where the force, and I think we saw that when we had, even though there wasn't much force, when we had the August meeting and the river was down to a small channel because of the dry season. But think about the most water you can see coming down there without a dam holding it back. And that water is going to be coming to and I'm not a hydrologist. Somebody else has to really say that, but it's
Right.
going to be channeled against that wall to a large extent.
Right. And
Are you talking about the upper part of the wall or the entire wall?
I would say the upper part.
It's just the
Right,
upper
the
I'd say
upper
the
part,
upper part. I would
close
say
to where
upper
the
part.
water comes
Right.
from.
I don't think
That's not the
I don't
seaway
think
or
the
the seawall.
designs show, any of the designs show removing the dam and keeping the water channel where you're talking about, though. That part of the wall would be gone. So I think that's
It would
where I
be-
got
okay.
confused, because I agree that if the water channel were to stay where it is, it would put pressure on the wall in the same way that the sluice gate does right now.
However, a natural channel would put pressure on the holding or the hill that is
Mhm.
there where the path,
Yeah.
the
Right.
current path is.
Yeah.
That
Right.
will change.
Right, so
Yeah.
intentional
Yes.
landscaping and planting and all of that to make that, yeah.
But it's important to be precise with our terms, is my whole point. That's not the seawall. That's I believe, the sluiceway. And if not, you know more about that, right?
Sluiceway,
The
yeah.
problem is it connects into the seawall.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
Boy.
At some point, this
and that's,
way.
that's the
Right.
problem. I mean,
Yes.
it's attached to the seawall.
Okay.
But when you mention the seawall, I got a picture, probably similar to what Rick was talking about, that it was going to come crashing down and bang lower down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not the upper part. So
And it-
that's
Yeah, the upper
helpful
part is what I meant,
clarification.
sorry.
right?
Yeah.
The
Thank
granite
you.
stones that got thrown around, though, were in the lower part.
Yes,
that
they
is
were.
controlled
Yes,
by
they were.
the
But that
library
was
board.
storm
Right.
surge, was it
Right,
not?
Right.
Yes, that
Exactly.
was storm surge.
That
So-
was the ocean's fault.
Yes.
We should all be very grateful that there's apparently another committee dealing with that.
Oh, my gosh.
Uh,
Exactly. With a whole nother set of funding
Oh,
options.
bless their hearts. Okay, more about Ray's recommendation?
I think time-wise, we might.
Yeah.
Right.
Move on.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I think that, I mean, nobody's kidding anybody here. We all knew Ray's recommendation would differ from what we heard last week. So this is giving us an opportunity to sort of
It is good.
interrogate some of that
Likely to
stuff.
raise
Good
a
to hear
lot of
both
questions.
sides.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, Courtney.
Okay. First, I want to apologize. Mine is long. I tried really hard to be succinct, but I'm just not good at that.
Just don't read it too fast.
I will try to go slow. Sorry. Maybe
No,
skip.
no. That wasn't a
Yours was-
criticism.
yeah,
It was a
yours was
request.
great. Yours was
I'll
great.
allow it.
Okay, so I joined the Megunticook River Citizens Advisory Committee 2 years ago following my involvement with Restore Megunticook, a local group advocating for the careful evaluation of restoration and dam removal options along the Megunticook River, including the potential removal of its lower 4 dams. When I joined MORCAC, I leaned into the responsibility with curiosity and open mind and a commitment to listen to all perspectives, recognizing that thoughtful, inclusive decision-making is essential for identifying effective solutions and charting a successful path forward. So the issue, as I see it, is the Megunticook River is an important cultural and ecological resource for the town of Camden. 7 dams span the river, largely built in the 19th century to power local industries. 4 of these dams, the Powder Mill Ruins, the Knowlton Street, Knox Mill, and the Montgomery dams, no longer serve their original purpose. Additionally, they require complex and costly maintenance and repairs. They raise flood risk, prevent sea run fish migration, and impair the health of the watershed. With increasing and intensifying precipitation, as well as aging dams that aren't built for flood resilience, it's clear we need to address the rising flood risk. Interflow's 2021 Megunticook River feasibility study concluded that dam removal would lower water levels in the river, creating a more resilient buffer to increasing and unpredictable flow conditions, and recommended removing the 4 lower dams. However, some community members have expressed interest in preserving the Montgomery Dam, citing its historical significance and its current contribution to aesthetics of the area. So MORCAC has been tasked with studying the facts, listening to the community, and providing recommendations to the Select Board on how to preserve and improve sustainability and resiliency of the Megunticook River and its watershed, while also considering the interests and needs of the community. We're starting with making a recommendation for the Montgomery Dam, as our decision will affect our recommendations for upstream dams. So the options for Montgomery Dam include dam restoration, which is status quo plus necessary repairs to the dam, partial dam restoration with fish passage, which is lowering the dam by 4 feet and adding a weir and pool fishway. And the final option is full dam removal, removing the dam and aligning the cascade to its original path. My personal recommendation would be to remove the Montgomery Dam and restore the river to its original course. This option offers multiple benefits. It reduces flood risk, enhances ecosystem health, eliminates maintenance costs, and would help attract significant federal funding to support river restoration, as well as removal of 3 additional dams and fish passage on the upper 3 dams. To make this decision, I carefully considered multiple factors, including dam maintenance costs, flood resilience and climate change, ecosystem health, history and Olmsted legacy, landscape aesthetics, and funding options. So let's start with dam maintenance costs. Dam maintenance for the Montgomery Dam involves weekly inspections, water level monitoring, and gate adjustments, which require the manual labor of 2 people. The gate is also operated during storms to prevent flooding of a building upstream and opened by request of property owners when work needs to be done on the buildings. Currently, the town of Camden, via the taxpayers, provides this service at no cost to the property owners. So our options really are, again, with the dam restoration, according to 2024 estimates, the cost of restoring the dam would be about $1 million in construction plus $2.3 million over the next 50 years. And this is for periodic repairs, and that would all be paid for the town. With partial dam restoration and fish passage, that would be $4.6 million in construction, all or 90% of which would be paid for by grants, possibly, plus $2.6 million over the next 50 years for repairs paid for the town. The final option, the full dam removal would cost $2.6 million in construction costs, all or 90% of which will likely be paid for by grants. This eliminates dam maintenance and repair costs entirely. So while there still will be costs for landscape maintenance, dam removal is by far the least expensive option and nullifies the need for dam maintenance. So let's move on to flood resilience and climate change. Rising temperatures in Maine have increased precipitation, with Camden receiving 16 extra inches of rainfall over the past century, equating to 9 billion more gallons annually in the Megunticook watershed. In the next 30 years, rainfall is expected to rise by 9 additional inches, adding 5 billion more gallons. This increased volume must flow through Camden's aging dams and narrow downtown drainage systems, which were not designed to handle such amounts. The Montgomery Dam impacts flood levels between the dam and just below the Brewster Building, affecting 15 private and 2 public properties within the regulatory floodplain. These floodplain assessments do not account for future rainfall predictions. In 1922, 6 to 8 inches of rainfall overwhelmed the dams along the Megunticook, flooding the downtown and causing about $2 million in damages in 2024 dollars. At this rate, especially due to the increasing pace of climate change, we are overdue for a significant flooding event. So restoring the dam would maintain current flood risks and does not help prepare for future risks. Partial dam restoration with fish passage, while lowering the water level behind the dam, would help to reduce the height of the drop. It doesn't significantly reduce the flood risk posed by the dam or the impacts to the surrounding buildings or area and buildings. However, full dam removal reduces flood risk by lowering the level of the river and allowing the river to flow freely at its own natural pace. This is by far the best option for resiliency. Ecosystem health. The dams in the Megunticook River create barriers that disrupt the natural flow of the river, negatively impacting its health, biodiversity, and ecological resiliency. These obstructions prevent migratory sea-run fish species such as alewives from reaching upstream spawning habitats. Alewives attempt to climb the falls every spring without luck. So, dam restoration, this would maintain current barriers to migratory sea-run fish species and dam drawdowns threatened wildlife such as American eels and other species living in the mill pond. Partial dam restoration with fish passage. So adding fish passage would help to restore river connectivity and enable fish migration, which would improve water quality and ecological health. However, fish passage structures do not fully replicate the ecological benefits of free-flowing river and typically allow fewer fish to ascend. So full dam removal provides a more comprehensive and effective approach than adding fish passage, delivering significant improvements in water quality, biodiversity, and overall ecological health. Furthermore, enabling full fish passage at the Montgomery Dam would unlock funding to reconnect 2 miles of river above the dam and create fish passage around the upper 3 dams. A healthier river also means a more resilient ecosystem that is better prepared to respond and adapt to the impacts of a changing climate. The enabling of sea-run fish migration would also attract prey species to the area, such as otters, eagles, osprey, seals, and enhance local lobster fisheries that utilize alewives for bait. Sea-run fish experts have verified that the introduction of sea-run fish would not lead to negative outcomes. So history and the Olmsted legacy. The damming of the Montgomery River played a significant role in fostering local industry and supporting the growth of our community, a history that's important to commemorate. It's equally important to celebrate the pre-industrial and indigenous history of the region, recognizing the natural landscapes and ecosystems that existed prior to the dams. Frederick Law Olmsted's sons, continuing their father's legacy, designed Camden's Harbor Park in the 1930s. As a pioneer in sustainable design and conservation, Olmsted championed designing parks that harmonize with their surrounding ecology and foster human connection to nature. According to the Camden Public Library Board of Trustees, the Olmsted brothers aimed to block the dam from view from Harbor Park. Dam restoration would preserve early industrial history, but does not consider pre-industrial history. While it would preserve the Olmsted's original design features, it does not align with the Olmsted legacy of sustainable design and conservation. Full dam removal, removing the dam would restore the Megunticook River to its natural course, unveiling a cascade reminiscent of the river's original state. This option aligns with the Olmsted's vision of fostering harmony between human design and ecological systems. To honor the dam's historical significance, interpretive markers could be placed near the falls, celebrating its role in Camden's industrial development and the community's evolution over time. Moving on to landscape aesthetics. These influence our connection to the natural built environment, enhancing community identity, local prosperity, and an individual well-being. Dam restoration includes needed repairs on the spillway and sluiceway, would prevent water from leaking out of the sluiceway and create a more robust and uniform waterfall. There would still be periods, however, of low water during drought or drawdowns for flood management and repairs. With the partial restoration, while most of the dam would remain, the waterfall would be reduced by 4 feet. Removing the dam would enable a beautiful, natural, 15-foot-long cascade of water that could be just as iconic and picturesque as the current falls. While dam removal won't change the total volume of water flowing, the flow rate will become more natural and variable following seasonal and weather-related patterns. The reduced slope from vertical to about 4% would result in a slower flow, perhaps around 2 to 7 miles per hour. However, there will still be gushing waterfall effect with water flowing at 10 to 20 miles an hour after heavy rains. Funding options. So federal grants for fish passage and transformational habitat restoration are currently available through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. Matt Bernier and Jamie Carter at NOAA have assured us the Megunticook River is a great candidate for funding and the design decisions would be made in close communication with the town. This grant money could help Camden fund the removal of the 4 lower dams, fish passage, and much-needed updates to the 3 upper dams, and general river restoration. It could also be used to update Camden's critical harbor infrastructure currently threatened by rising seas. While the grant program does not require match funding and may fund the entire project, Camden may be asked to contribute some funds. However, to be eligible for these grants, the town must facilitate fish passage at the Montgomery Dam, either by removing the dam or adding a fishway. So dam restoration in this with funding would not make Camden eligible for grant funding for upstream dam removal, for the fish passage, and for river restoration. Partial dam restoration with the fish passage, by including fish passage, Camden can increase its chances of securing federal funding, but full dam removal as the most attractive option for donors presents the most promising opportunity for securing funding to remove the 4 lower dams, implement fish passage, and update the 3 upper dams, and restore the river ecosystem. So conclusion, I'm almost done. I'm sorry.
Do the conclusion slowly.
Okay. Our planet is currently facing a global ecological crisis, presenting an urgent call to action for humanity to take responsibility as stewards of the environment. Over the last 50 years alone, there's been a catastrophic 73% decline in the average size of monitored wildlife populations, and parts of our planet are approaching dangerous tipping points driven by the combination of nature loss and climate change. This jeopardizes the stability of natural systems upon all life depends, posing serious threats to humanity. We have an urgent responsibility to restore balance and ensure that the Earth remains resilient and capable of supporting life for generations to come. Each action, whether large or small, contributes to addressing this crisis. Embracing this responsibility is not only an ethical imperative, but also a practical necessity for ensuring a livable future. In Camden, our outdated dam system stands in the way of a thriving local watershed and climate-resilient future. To build a vibrant watershed that supports both ecological and economic health, we must align with the best available science and expert guidance, while also coming together as a community to make decisions that will benefit both residents and visitors for years to come. Removing the Montgomery Dam presents the best opportunity for our town to restore the river, enhance its ecological integrity, and strengthen its resilience to climate change. Removing the dam would reduce flood risk for 17 homes and properties, or 94 if the private dams are removed upstream. It would save taxpayers millions of dollars in dam reparation, repair, and flood damages. It would align with the Olmsted legacy of sustainability and conservation, enhance the aesthetic value of Camden Harbor, draw tourists keen to observe the sea-run fish migrations in the spring, align with the best available science, scientific research, and expert recommendations for river restoration, and unlock funding for removing the 3 private dams above it and building fish passage at the 3 upper dams, which would allow 2 miles of the river to flow freely, reconnecting divided ecosystems, enable sea-run fish to complete their spring migrations, improve the health of the ecosystem, making the river, watershed, and ocean more resilient to the effects of climate change. It would open up more recreation opportunities such as canoeing, kayaking, and fishing. I have a couple additional recommendations. So to help to memorialize the dam, I recommend that a small part of the dam is left in a place in a manner that does not disrupt the river flow or aesthetics, and an educational plaque is placed in a publicly accessible area. I also suggest considering ways to design the cascades so that there are a set of smaller waterfalls and adding a small pond at the top of the cascade where possible. To ensure success, future design planning efforts should also include the consultation of community stakeholders, river abutters, owners of the buildings above Montgomery Dam, and local and Olmsted historians, as well as Camden Library Board of Trustees. Whew, the end.
Thank you, Courtney.
Apologize. It's long.
No, I don't think it was any longer.
Okay, good.
Okay. Questions or responses to Courtney's recommendation? Tyler?
You mentioned in here
Do your button.
about returning, you mentioned in here about returning the river to its original or natural course. In the event that the ledge is stripped and it's realized that the natural course was not there, does that bother you? Do you have issues with developing a new natural course? I mean, we've seen some ledge probes, but most engineers will tell you ledge probes just tell you what's where you probed.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
So I think, do you have an issue or concern if your intent is to restore it to its natural course and come to find out the natural course is 30 feet further into that bank?
Right. I think I'm more interested in naturalizing the river as much as possible than making it perfectly aligned with the original state. So that's a really good point. Maybe I need to add that in here. But yeah, I completely understand that we might run into some obstacles when we finally get into the design stage and construction stage. So yeah, I'm okay with some differences there. Yeah.
Natural like.
Natural like.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And do you see, just another question different than that, but in your recommendation about looking at a pool at the top, do you see that as a passive element, like that water's just sitting in and it's up there? Or do you see it as active, like it's tied to the river in some manner?
Either way.
Okay.
Yeah. I think for me, I just wanted to bring it up as a consideration. I'm open to many different scenarios. I really liked your idea of even pumping water up and creating a pond, because I do understand that people and the store owners really enjoy having a pond there. And it could be so beautiful with different kind of plantings. And I have, ideas in my head about what it could look like, all natural.
What's your biggest concern about dam removal?
Biggest concern, like the unintended consequences, or I mean, it's a risk that we're going to take about how it's going to look, first of all. And some people might not like the way it looks. I envision a more natural looking river. It's going to be lower, and the slope won't be as steep. To me, those things that, in my mind, could be quite beautiful. I understand that other people might be missing out on the kind of the vertical waterfall that was created. So that's why I recommended thinking about creating some of these, other more vertical areas along that path, the slope, if possible. I don't know if it's possible. Yeah.
So Courtney, I actually heard from, I didn't know how to process it because it didn't fit into one of our three categories necessarily, but from somebody in the community who also is an engineer who actually drew or reconfigured a photo of the river that would leave, if you're basically at the harbor looking up, it would be over on the right, kind of below Smiling Cow, I guess, leaving a section there that would be, and I'm wondering if you saw that same rendering, and if that's what you have in mind when you say you're open to the possibility of leaving like a chunk of the dam that
That's a good idea.
doesn't
right there.
dam anything, but rather it remains a structure of some sort.
Some kind of historical marker that doesn't, get in the way of the natural river or flood resilience, XYZ. But yeah, I think that's a possibility.
I agree with you. I mean, I wonder whether part of the dam can't be saved on the one side if the natural flow of the river was more towards Harbor Park. Is there a way of perhaps saving some kind of reflecting pond at the top?
Right.
The other thing that, and this is totally different, that came to mind is I wonder if we take down the dam, how does that change the floodplain and the property abutters? Will their insurance change because they maybe are at less flood risk?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's something that is possible or not.
Right. Yeah, I think that's come up before. I don't think we've.
I think Audra did say that the dam or not, the town's liability doesn't really change.
No, I understand.
But
I'm
yeah.
thinking for property owners, if the river is lower because we've taken the dam down and the flow potentially is lower, do they have a benefit of perhaps being out of a floodplain
Gotcha.
and less insurance?
But that would be horizontal distance. But FEMA is going to have to do some reconfiguring on their maps.
Yeah.
Given the predicted changes in rainfall especially.
True.
And because insurance largely is going to reflect, particularly for mortgaged properties, going to reflect what FEMA says. To me, it's just a big unknown. We just don't know at this point. We have been told that property taxes won't go up. In other words, the property won't be more or less valuable.
But whether you have to, but it's more of a flood insurance question.
Exactly.
It's a
It's
FEMA
not the
matter.
taxation.
I was thinking flood insurance.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Just wondered. I don't know.
It would make sense that it would go down.
If you look at catastrophic rain events, I mean, the maps still show that a lot of those properties in a catastrophic rain event, they would still flood. So I don't know that it would make, I don't know to what extent of the difference it would make, at what point that would be worthwhile to flood.
Especially if we're having increased rainfall.
Right. Well, and that's what, I've been talking about, like if there's a stalled out storm with mass amounts,
Which properties are we talking about flooding in a catastrophic event?
I'm thinking more upriver.
Upriver.
Like
Right.
around the
Yeah.
impoundments.
Exactly, up around the impoundments.
Yes.
Right, because the impoundments, I would assume, would be lower and more able to absorb more water because they will go back to their natural state.
Well, because they'll
You're talking-
actually
you're
be
talking about the
land that can
Knoxville and
Right,
absorb
Knowlton
it.
areas.
exactly.
You're talking about the Knoxville and Knowlton areas and not the
That
ones
impound-
behind
yes.
Montgomery Dam.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have a property behind Montgomery Dam,
Mhm.
and I have structural elements that are very close to that FEMA floodplain level.
Ah.
And we've done things to remove structural elements out of that.
Hmm.
Because we're within like a foot on certain things, so.
So do you think removing the dam may help with that or not?
I think the tricky thing is, I think when
Maybe today,
when I
about
think
50
the
years.
FEMA reassessment
Yeah.
of their floodplains,
Mhm.
I think the answer is yes. If you remove the dam, it probably drops that, but it may be fighting against other things that they're
It's an
analyzing.
increase, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Just a thought. Just came to mind as you were
It
talking
could be
about it.
advantageous not to ask FEMA to redo it.
Right.
Lots of variables. is the
Yeah.
bottom line.
right.
Okay. Any other go ahead, Elfie, please.
So you said 90% of which will be paid for by grants. So that referred to taking down dams, dam removal, I think, right?
Mhm.
Do we have that number somewhere? Was that in a?
It's just from my experience, the matching usually is up to 10% and no more.
Even though
I
they
mean,
said
I
it's not
could be
required.
wrong.
But you said
It's not required. It's not required. It could be fully paid for.
Matching that the town has to do is up to 10%.
Yeah, and Audra stated that same,
Oh, interesting.
That
Because when I
same-
heard that, I heard the opposite way around.
no,
completely.
she said in it that the The most that they had seen was up to 10%
But the
and not
town would
above.
have to pay.
Yeah, as a match, yeah.
But I
Which
think
would,
that's
like, be
good to
the-
consider, because I think if we all of
Yeah.
a sudden say, oh, well,
It's great.
usually most of them are 100%, I think it's good to
Yeah.
say,
Right.
hey, we may have to pay up to 10%.
Yeah,
Even-
totally.
Yeah, I would
had
rather
that. I
be
mean, flip around.
overly
Right,
concerned
even,
about it.
even the grant that we received that is paying for FB Environmental and everything.
Right.
It was, what, a 15% town match? I'm not sure what the percentage was, but it was not,
Remember?
it was not,
Yeah.
it was not a free
It wasn't
one.
free.
The town
Yeah.
had to pay up, I think, 350,000
Might have been
or
10.
so.
Percent.
We lost Bina off the.
Yeah.
Right.
But so if the amount to remove the dam is 2.6 million, that's what, 260,000 possibly.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
But even then, that's lower than
Right.
the cost it would to restore the dam and maintain it.
And remember, there's new income from fish.
Right.
Oh, like tourists.
Forever,
Yeah.
no, forever income in managing a harvest. That is.
Eventually.
That is a
Fisheries.
possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a likely result.
If the town of Camden harvested alewives, is that what you mean?
Yeah, if finances are the main concern, then the forever income of a fish harvest would be of interest and
Yeah.
import, and that's real.
And just so I understand, you're saying that the town would go into the fish harvesting business to generate public funds, not,
Maybe a license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If,
License.
if there are all sorts of ways to manage a fish harvest, it's a possibility.
That's a good point.
If forever income is wanted
Yeah.
instead
I mean,
of forever cost.
You would probably be familiar with it, but the Elver fishermen, they pay, I believe, a fee or whatever for
The
being
license,
able- being able to use our property in Camden to catch
Yeah, they
eels.
play a lottery, some win.
You sound like you've lost that lottery. huh?
No, it's just a basic fact.
all right. More response to Courtney before we figure out how we're going to proceed?
It might have happened while I was away, but did anybody ask? You said something about in the natural situation, a 15-foot cascade. Do
That's just
you-
how long it is from, oh, I don't remember exactly. It might have been the dam, actually, to the bottom of the cascade. I mean, the
Elevation.
I can't remember exactly where it is now.
Okay.
The distance, not the drop, the
Okay.
actual distance.
Diagonal.
Okay, gotcha.
But I can look into
Yeah,
that.
I
and make
was
sure.
just a little confused by that.
It might
wording.
be, yeah.
So you were,
I
you
should
weren't
probably-
referencing, were you referencing a width of it
No, the
or
length.
okay, a
Yeah.
length?
And
But I
your
should
estimate of
make
the
it clear of
velocity
that.
of water coming down over that 15-foot,
4%, a 4%
4% slow.
grade. Yeah. I just kind of looked up, how fast does water flow over 4%?
I was
Well,
was gonna say-
certainly less so than.
Less so than vertical.
Right.
Yes, very.
I was going
Very
to ask
different.
if you actually have a list of all of your references, because you had a lot more
Sure, yeah.
figures
Hmm.
than I've heard before.
Mhm.
Numbers
Well,
of households.
mostly it's
and-
all from like interfluve report or the cost estimates that were given to us recently, or
So it's all in the books
the-
we have.
the billions of, gallons of water. That's from the USG
Right.
survey. So yeah, I can definitely do
Yeah, and some of those
footnotes in
I'm
my
not
report.
questioning them, I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
no,
sourcing and
definitely,
citation would be
yeah.
helpful.
I'd be happy to.
I actually had a question in that same vein. When you said about the availability of either public or other grant funding for removal of the other lower dams, which I read as meaning Knox Mill and Knowlton Street, that even though they're privately owned, there would be grant money available for that. Is that sourced in any of the stuff that I probably should have
I
internalized?
think, did
That's-
Audra tell us that or somebody?
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's
mentioned
pretty
that?
clear from the information
Yeah.
from Matt Bernier that they would
Yeah.
be.
That Bernier.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I
That's the
can,
question.
Be
I can look
included
for
in
that
those, yeah.
proof somewhere.
Yeah, because they're critical to the fish passage and
Yeah,
right,
ecosystem issues.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
and just
okay.
because they're private doesn't mean that they can get federal
Yeah.
funding.
We just don't know if the the actual dams have to be transferred over to the town first before that is done or not.
Well, they might be transferred to the Down East Salmon Federation.
Yeah, okay,
Mm.
yeah. Mhm, okay.
I said might be.
Right, yeah, because when you transfer that, there's also
Potentially
risks
exists.
to.
No
The
promises.
potential exists.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else for Courtney? So we're at 6:05.
Mhm.
We're scheduled to adjourn at 6:15. We have two other folks that we haven't heard from yet. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're not going to be able to both present in 9 minutes.
No, I don't care. I don't know how fast Tyler can read.
I can go pretty
Well,
quick.
No,
my,
but
my
I
two
don't
questions, before we get to that, actually not even two questions. Do you want to drive on through 6:30?
Given the weather?
Or at least 6:20.
All right, I'll just shut up. We'll go until
No,
we're done
no, no, no.
going.
I mean, the other option.
The other option is to hold our other meeting
Is
and
to-
have
Right.
public
And
comments.
have public
Right.
comment.
We could-
in
we
the
could have
remaining-
8
right.
minutes
Would-
worth
that
of
would
public
be what-
comments.
That's what I would lean
That might be
towards.
All right.
smart.
Given
Yeah.
the
As
amount
long as
that
you
has
don't
been
feel married
shared, I think
presenting
that
today.
Does anybody disagree with that?
No.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's.
Thank you very much.
I can't make it to the next meeting. Unfortunately, I have a work meeting.
All right.
Just letting everyone know. But I will listen once I get home.
All right.
you'll be punished appropriately.
Oh, good.
Okay, so folks, we'll go through 6:20. If anyone on the committee needs to leave at 6:15, so be it. But we'll keep the Zoom open through 6:20 to allow as much comment as possible or questions. So just try to keep them tight if possible. But does anybody from the public have anything they'd like to present?
I just have a question about finding information. Courtney just mentioned costs estimate recently released. I haven't seen them. How can I get a statement? And also, Mike Burke had talked about his recent hydrology reports around the Montgomery Dam site, and I haven't seen that. So it leads to the general question. You guys, I understand where you're at, and your report is coming to the select board, but the technical part of it, which is the majority of the money, where is that report? When is that coming? And who's looking after that? Thank you.
Ken, if I can, I think that was a question you asked this afternoon in the evening, correct? And my understanding is that that has gone to Mike Burke and that he is going to be responding to your questions. Don't ask me for when.
And just a quick follow-up on that. So whoever has the open, is it you, Deb, who is communicating with Bina most closely? Can you ask for, are all of our written recommendations being put onto the website?
No, at this point, no. I'm
Okay.
just collecting them for I was hoping on the 18th that we would have a discussion
Mhm.
to sort of begin to pull themes together. And Bina has sent me a model, no substance, but the shape and form of a recommendation
Okay.
along with an appendix. And that I will share. I didn't want to do that in advance of people's presentations.
Yeah.
But as soon as we're done doing the presentations, I'll share that. And then I was hoping in the meeting before Christmas, we'd begin to pull some of this together.
Ho, ho, ho. So I just ask to answer Ken's questions about the sourcing and the site. And if we have a updated report of some sort from Mike about those points, it would be helpful just to put that onto
The
the
costing
website.
and the engineering reports. There
The
were some
hydrology
cost-
reports.
The
yeah.
hydrology.
I think
okay.
they weren't finalized.
No.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
but I
is that
think
they're very
they're close.
freshly, yeah.
They're getting, but I think they wanted to make sure
No,
that they
we
were
haven't seen
accurate
it.
We
before
haven't seen
they.
them either.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I saw them. No, wait, I think Audra sent the cost analysis to us. That's what I was looking at.
I think I did, because what happened was I asked Bina some question. I can't now remember remember I was
But
all.
that was an
About the
old
capital
one. That
cost.
was not
That
the
was-
new one. That was
Oh.
the one she
Yeah.
sent you was one we had gotten
Okay.
previous.
So I guess,
Yeah, there could be an updated.
So I will ask Bina
right.
with the CC to Mike.
If there's a place for there to be sort of time stamped, like as of whatever
Yeah.
today is, December
Right.
something, that these are the uploads that reflect the questions that came in that day. I think that would be useful.
I think, and I could be completely making this up, but I thought that Audra had said that she thought some of those would be finalized like mid-January to be available.
My understanding.
So that's why it hasn't been made
Yeah.
public yet, because it's not completely finished.
But I'll double check on that to make sure. In fact, I'll
Yeah,
just
I mean,
check with Audra.
that could be a fabricated memory, but I don't think so.
That sounds
No, that
familiar.
sounds familiar. Yep.
And I like the idea of dating them at the
Yes.
top so that we know that it's as of this date.
Absolutely.
Share file, right? Good. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to say something or pose a question? Go ahead, please.
Good job,
And please introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. My name's Jennifer Healy. I'm a Camden resident. Just something to share in general. Questions came up in regards to Ray speaking and, do the majority of people in town feel this way? Or where do you get this information? Or is it from the people on your committee? That type of thing. Several years ago, this pin was created, probably 4 years ago now. Originally, it's had the word DAM on it, DAMN, and people said maybe take the N out. But so we have. But one of the things I'll just share with you, and I think it's important for everyone in a town like ours, you put a pin on, no matter what it says, people respond to it. You're opening yourself up, good, bad, or otherwise, to people approaching you. It makes you approachable. And what happens when I put this on, they don't know who I am or if I'm on a committee or not, or pro or con. They see the pin. And what happens is, and this I'm just sharing to you to help you understand what's happening in town. On a daily basis, and I'll use the expression butcher, baker, candlestick maker. I get approached on the street, at F&B, at Quarry Hill, at Hannaford's, wherever, at the bank, wherever I go. And this is important for you to hear because I'm not keeping track or adding up the numbers. People come up to me and they go, yes. And a woman the other day, she came up to me so closely, she kind of scared me. I thought, do I know her? She didn't know me. And she just said, yes. I'm so pleased that there are people thinking about and going to address this and to save the falls. The butcher at the F&B the other day, where there's the glass where you can look in and order your meat. He said, come around the side. And he's sitting there and he's pulling apart a chicken and he's going at it. And he had a 20-minute conversation and he was so excited and he's lived in town forever. And he said, I'm so glad to see that there are people out there. And can I have a pin? And let's talk about it. And people in the deli who are getting their newspaper or getting over at where you get your cheese, they're all listening. People are very earnest and eager for information. Yours, mine, both sides. They don't feel they're getting information. I'll tell you that as a regular Joe out here, from you guys or from us. They don't feel their concerns are being answered, quite frankly. What is this really about? And we keep, and in our meetings, we're trying to say, keep it simple, explain. And what is this really about? People have very, very strong feelings about this. And I don't know numbers, I don't know what percent, and it's not just old geezers who feel we should say the dam. That's the impression we kind of get when you guys talk. It's old people. Or it's human emotions. How dare you be human? This is an earth issue. Well, humans are pretty important to the earth as well as fish. So I just wanted to share with you what happens out on the street when somebody sees this. I'm not telling them how to react to me. I'm not standing behind a table and saying, come over here and share your opinion. Every day that I wear this, no matter where I am, Hannaford people will stop and they'll start talking. And they're very positive towards this. So you know, I'm not telling you to fight harder because I'm just letting you know what's going on out there. So I know you've had a lot of meetings. I know you've made these great illustrations. I went to your MERCAC presentations at the school, and I have definite feelings about how those went and how people were perceived and how they were treated. It's very obvious to people. And I'll stop.
Thank you. The other person who was going to comment is putting her coat on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you. Thank you.
My comment is not very long. My name is Barb Oland. I live in Camden. And I just want to say, one, I've been watching most of your meetings, not every single one, but most of them. And I just am really impressed by all of you for all the research and work you've done on this as a volunteer community group. And I just think it's very impressive. And two, I was one of the groups that was going out in the middle of the winter to put together a petition opposing the Save the Dam Falls petition. And people were calling me, I heard you have a petition. I want to sign it. And it was basically, 4 or 5 weeks in January that we did this, and was not pleasant to be out. And there was lots and lots of people who are really interested in doing this. And people of all ages, but especially younger people were like, thank God we have to do something, because they're the ones who's going to inherit this whole situation for us. And we have to think ahead for what's the best for the future of our children and their children and whatever's down the road. So, but anyway, I just want to say thank you, because I think every one of you done a really professional job.
Thank you. Thank you, Barb.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. All right. Well, we're past 6:15 just by a click. So I will invoke the power of the chair and adjourn.
You don't even want a motion. Way to go.
You like that power, don't you?
Listen, I've been in funny little Robert's Rules of Order groups since I was a kid. So.
Really?
He obviously hasn't heard of Roberta's Rules of Order.
Ooh, what are those? I want to know.
Quite different.
Am I supposed to be chairman next meeting?
Probably me.
No, it's Susan.
Okay. All right.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
That'll be a good one.
And I assume we're not-
I'm sad to
and I
miss
assume
that.
we're not
No,
meeting on
and
the
just
25th.
before everybody leaves, a reminder, the next meeting is a week from today, the 18th. You're not going to be there.
I agree that yours was in this room.
In this room.
Is there anything I can send?
Monday night, I heard about it. I saw
Well, I didn't realize, because it said that they had a drop in membership from like 1,000 into 400, and I didn't get any impression that was happening. I mean, we've been part of the chamber for as long as we've existed, and I kind of just thought that's what everybody did, because yeah.
And you moved here, it used to be just the Camden, Rockwell, Lincoln. Village.
Right, yeah.
Here. And then they merged, here.
To include Rockland, yeah.
Talking to a lot of business owners here, and it's like, that was a total mistake.
Oh, really?
Ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna be overrun by bigger companies.
Right,
where
yeah.
Rockland and the little guys with P&Gs and stuff aren't gonna get the attention.
Right. Well, and that's what I didn't even really realize that we had merged with Rockland until I got a call saying, hey, we need
Well, you wasn't here
brochures.
when that happened.
Well, I mean, at some point they said we need brochures for the Rockland office, and I was like, what? I don't even know there was a Rockland office. So that kind of. But I mean, it's a bummer, because definitely a lot of people do still get. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but the fact that they call me regularly for more brochures means that many people are coming in and taking them. So.
Right, here, I don't know what the traffic was down in Rockland.
Right.
Even when it was over by the Lighthouse Museum.
Yeah.
But here in Camden, people are doing it all the time. There's
Yeah.
just a parking spot
Well, right.
there
You can just walk right in.
And the other thing is, the Chamber is the one that produced the jewel.
Right.
And it's gonna be no
Right.
really big
Yeah.
promotional and
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
All the businesses are.
Well, and they would connect sometimes. They would give a call if they had somebody who their other reservation went awry somehow, and could we accommodate? Or there's somebody in town that has some sort of repair to their house that's going to make them not be able to be there. Do we have availability to help with that and work in town? So there was a lot of coordinating happening that I thought was really beneficial. So yeah, I'm really quite, because it was a way for us to work with other hotels also in terms of like making sure that we cover each other as needed. So